I'm Randy Newman, and it's almost time, kids. So let's light a candle every night, wear a bunch of green, and let's get ready to eat us some turkey. I love that turkey, boy.
Yeah, Randy?
Yeah?
None of that has anything to do with
Halloween.
Halloween.
For Pete's sake, Charlie, I see the kids running around with a drumstick in their hand.
Have you ever seen
walking down the street
at all?
Don't tell me you don't have nothing to do with it.
Clytus, I'm bored.
How to get to Sesame Street? How to get to Sesame Street?
Good evening, boys and girls. This is The Count. And today's show is brought to you by the letters H and the letters M for Hell Ming and the number 20. You see, I love to count. I've been counting episodes for several months now of my favorite show, the Hell Ming Power Hour, with host Rik and Danny. That's two great hosts. I'm here tonight to count to 20 for the 20th episode of the greatest podcast this side of Oscar's Trash Can. That's 20 great episodes. Here's the 20 more, guys, because, hey, I love to count. Keep up the good work. And by the way, Grover says hey.
The Halloween Power Hour.
Ricky and Danny.
Wants your children. It's just that simple, people.
Oh, Flash Gordon.
Mr. Ming, tear down this wall.
Randy Newman.
Hail Ming.
But it's changing.
Shut up, Winda.
Shut up. Will you shut up?
And now, here's your two hosts of the only show that cooks the bacon and cheese in the middle of the hamburger patty. Here's Rik and Danny.
Hey, what's going on, people?
Welcome back, everybody.
Yeah. Sit down before you fall down.
Especially you in the back. Watch out.
Hey, got a lot of fun for you. Welcome to our Spooktober. What you might call it? I don't know what to call this thing.
Spooktober.
We're gonna have a good time coming at you with a chainsaw. All right, welcome back, everybody. Glad to have you with us for episode number 20. Excited about that, man. This is going to be great. And as you heard at the beginning of the show, the Count from Sesame Street, man, he was glad that we're going to do the show, and he's a big fan. So we're tickled. I tell you what. So from time to time throughout the show, instead of our Hell Ming, you may hear an occasional to kind of get us through the show. Wow. So you got that, and I also took in honor of being our Spooktacular event, I kind of did this to the Hell Ming too.
Hell Ming.
And let's remember, people, that we only make one episode a year. So that means we've been doing this for 20 years now.
Yeah,
and you guys have been with us since the beginning. 20 years.
20 years, folks. You got to celebrate that. It's incredible. So we're tickled, and the audience is happy with that too. They're really on board, and glad to have the audience back with us. But hey, we got a fantastic show. We got 2 movies containing chainsaws. Not only that, we have the incredible Duncan McLeish with us as well. So we're just looking forward to this show. Danny, you got anything else?
I just wanted to say thanks for hanging with us, because it's been a long ride, and we're not there yet. So keep hanging in there.
That's right. Another 20 years, we'll have this thing figured out. All right, we'll be right back.
Hail Ming Power Hour is brought to you by the Ice Moon of Phrygia. Come see Phrygia. Please, and loyal subjects of Mongo like you. Hail Ming!
All right, everybody, and welcome back. We are excited about this, getting to some scary movies that we like. And this is going to be a lot of fun because with us, all the way from Scotland, I'm gonna go ahead and say it, one of my heroes, the Prince of Podcast,
the Highlander for the 21st century,
the teacher of Tenebrae,
Scotland's certified best citizen,
the Hans Gruber of horror,
Duncan McTastic,
the Ghoul of Grangemouth.
I think we can just go ahead and bring him in here.
The Phantom of Falkirk.
No, let's just bring him in there. Let's stop giving him names. And
I got one more. The only guy that I know that says Philum, Mr. Duncan McLeish.
That was the most ridiculous introduction I've ever heard in my years of podcasts. Never ever changed, guys. That was amazing.
That's what we go for.
Oh, that was so funny. Oh my God. Thank you very much for having me back. It feels like it's been ages since I've been here, but it's not that long. I was doing the math last night because that's what I do at night time, math. That's why I don't sleep. And yeah, it's only been a couple of months, but you guys have continued that meteoric rise to greatness. Yeah, it's fantastic. Thank you for inviting me back.
As far as coming down to being a horror fan, this guy is the embalmment.
The embalmment.
I like that.
The embalmment of all the great movies put together. Just a world of knowledge when it comes to horror. Great show. Podcast Under the Stairs. I'm a huge fan. The main reason that we even started this show is because I got hooked to listening to his show. And so we're just tickled to have him on board. He actually picked a couple of movies. So just like I said last week, if you don't like it, it's Duncan's fault. So
I haven't heard that bit yet. Still listening to that show, but I'm glad to see that being thrown under the bus early. It's usually halfway through a show before someone throws me under the bus, but it's good to get out of the way at the start.
All right, so the two movies we're going to cover, we're going to step right into the first one here. The first one we're going to cover, to me, is a classic, and we'll talk about why. But it's the incredible Texas Chainsaw Massacre Part 2. And to give us a synopsis on that, we got the great John Cleese.
Hello, this is John Cleese, and I'm here to tell you about the Texas Chainsaw Massacre Part 2 on behalf of the Hail Ming Power Hour. Fun for the whole family. The Texas Chainsaw Massacre Part 2 is the story of 5 fluffy bunnies on their journey to the Rainbow Kingdom to save the denizens of Melody Valley from the Frog People. A solid 10 out of 10. Young and old will delight in this feel-good film. Watch for cameo appearances from myself, Treat Williams, and Hulk Hogan as the sheriff.
Treat Williams.
Ta-ta.
Oh, Treat Williams.
It doesn't get much worse than that John Cleese.
At least he didn't mention the war. That's
What war would that be?
You're not allowed to mention it.
That one.
All right, man. So I'll tell you what. Duncan's our guest. Duncan, what's your first reason of why we watch Texas Chainsaw Massacre Part 2?
Chop Top.
Oh, yeah, without a doubt.
Yeah, Bill Moseley's Chop Top. Unfortunately, Bill Moseley's not really been able to get away from Chop Top since he played that kind of version of that kind of over-the-top hick, sort of hillbilly, redneck, hybrid character. But he is instantly entertaining and gross in equal measure. The plate is disgusting. The fact he has to scratch his plate with a modified coat hanger is disgusting. He looks disgusting, and he's hilarious in this movie.
Well, and when he's first introduced there, and he asked her if she's going to play Anna Vita da Gata.
Yeah.
It's like that song's messed up enough without you messing up the title. But I agree, he's definitely in my top reasons because he chews up the scenery every scene he's in, and you never know what he's going to do next.
You messed up my Sonny Bono wig. It's good. Just his lines, man. I mean, you've heard the quotes from Chop Top and samples that are in people's music.
Dog will hunt.
Dog will hunt. It's an iconic character, and it's hard to believe really why until you see this movie, and he just really steals the show. Well, he steals one half of the show. I imagine Danny's first reason is the other half.
Well, the other half, if you're talking about Caroline Williams, Stretch the DJ. That's my first reason to watch it, actually. I think she did a fantastic job being Alice in Wonderland in this movie because she goes down the rabbit hole literally, and it's kind of like the first one. They tried to reprise a lot of the just the feel of being trapped with the insane, and they tried to make it over the top in an 80s way, and it must have been near impossible for her to pull that off. I mean, I maybe you thought I was going to say Dennis Hopper.
Yeah.
And Dennis Hopper most certainly is a reason to watch the movie. He's fantastic. But I've got to say that she deserves every bit of credit that she can get for her performance in this, because she might just be a scream queen, but she's got to go through so much. And she's great.
Yep, I agree. And I'm really shocked, actually, that she picked her, because she's who you identify with in this movie. So this is who you're taking the trip with. And just some of her lines too. Hang up, hang up, hang up, hang up. Yeah, so it's great. So it leaves it to me. I'm going to say Dennis Hopper, man. I forgot how over the top he is in this movie.
He's on some sort of narcotic. I don't believe for 1 second that this man is not fueled on pure cocaine. Like Pablo Escobar was at the back just feeding him drugs. There is no way that this is, like he said himself, that he thinks is the worst performance he ever turned in any movie. I would say to him, he's not seen every movie that he's ever been in, because this is just wholly unique. When have you ever met a character who's essentially on some level supposed to be the hero, and then you realise really quickly he's just as demented, if not more, than the actual villains in the movie?
That's what's interesting to me about this. The whole time revisiting and watching it, which, there's a lot of dark humor in it. We'll talk about that in a little bit. But to me, everything Rob Zombie has kind of pulled away with Devil's Rejects and House of a Thousand Corpses is so much this movie.
Yeah, William Forsythe's character in Devil's Rejects is definitely 100% Dennis Hopper's character in this.
I totally agree. Caroline Williams, you even said it a while ago, Danny, going down the rabbit hole. These are all things that are in those movies. And I guess I didn't put it together to go back and revisiting. It's like, wow, Rob Zombie really took a lot from this movie.
In the whole trip into what was it, Texas Battleland and the
Nomland.
and the whole Mad Max future that they live in, it's almost like you're supposed to be getting deep in there, but you're still just scratching the surface.
Right.
I think that's what makes the movie like so jarringly effective, is that very much like in the very first Texas Chainsaw Massacre, everything you see in the first 10-15 minutes of that movie is just a superficiality of a world that we think we understand. But when that door slams, when Leatherface slams that door, and then you realise there's a whole different world behind that door, that's the scary part, because from that point onwards, there are no rules. There is no understanding of where that movie's going to go. And Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2 just basically ramps that up on almost every level. So there is no context for anything that you're seeing here at all. It's like you say, it's like some sort of weird dystopian future. There's a theme park that doesn't really make sense, so why would anyone go to it? I mean, the movie doesn't explain anything then, but to its credit, shouldn't explain anything, because that's the most unsettling part of the movie, is that when you go around the corner with a character, you really genuinely don't know what you're going to see. And that just doesn't fly in today's cinema. Today's cinema, they want you to know that when you go around the corner, there's going to be the scare, or there's going to be, there's going to be some some kind of version of something that you can identify with, something that you've seen before, something that you understand. And Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2 just exists in a world where nothing really makes sense, and you just have to, as an audience, just have to ride the roller coaster, so to speak. And it's really, there are certain shots in this movie that are genuinely disturbing, even though the movie itself is, I mean, for all intents and purposes, is a comedy. Hooper himself said that he, even though I totally disagree with him, he says Texas Chainsaw Massacre is a comedy, and he was like that. He will defend his stance on that. It is an absurd comedy that people don't find funny. So when he came to make the second movie, he just amped up, and that's what you get.
And it was the perfect atmosphere for this kind of comedy horror too, because you're starting to see this a lot. So it really fit in nicely with Evil Dead 2, Reanimator, all these movies that were coming out that had this kind of same feel where it was just over the top. On the very top of my list, everything Duncan just described, I can narrow down to one word: canon. This is a canon film. You guys listened to the Ninja 3 show we did? Same company did this movie. I
put down that this very easily could have been Ninja 3 The Domination Part 2.
Right.
It's every bit as crazy.
There you go. Canon.
But I'm going to say that, this going down the rabbit hole, this whole exploration of insanity, you can't miss what congeals that. And that's my number 2 reason: the yuppie sidekick wearing the hologram glasses. He represents society as a whole, and how guys with pistols and hologram glasses need to learn that there's an insane curvature of the earth, and they're running straight for it with their buddy in the sweater.
Hook the horns, man! Woo! Hook the horns!
Let's call that radio station up. Woo!
What kind of name is Stretch, anyways?
Exactly.
All right, Duncan, what you got, man?
I'm going to go Leatherface in this one. Bill Johnson's portrayal of Leatherface.
Right.
When you see Gunnar Hansen has this very lumbering shape, which, in a really disjointed way of walking, which makes Leatherface terrifying. When you're approaching this movie, it's supposed to be more comedic in tone. So it's no surprise that the recast Leatherface, I don't know what Gunnar Hansen was doing at the time, but they recast it anyway, and they bring in Bill Johnson, who is slighter of frame than what you see with Hansen. But at the same time, I think his portrayal is brilliant. I think what you get is someone that has a bit more of a slapstick timing in his portrayal, and when you have that on the screen, it adds to it. I mean, he's not as menacing a character or sympathetic a character as he is in any of the other movies. The performance in this one is wholly unique because it exists in a world where, he is kind of liked, but he isn't kind of liked by his own family. He's kind of bullied. He's made fun of. The whole sequence where they're trying to basically push him towards Carlin Williams' character on some level, you assume to lose his virginity. You're not quite sure, but you do I kind of feel myself being kind of emotionally invested in Leatherface, if that even makes sense, in this movie. And it's the only one out of all interpretations or incarnations of the character. The Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2 is the only one that I actually do that with.
Yeah, I don't agree.
You don't agree?
I don't agree. I think
shut up, Scottish man.
First off, it's really hard for me to compare these two movies. I mean, it's true that you go down the rabbit hole. In the first one, you're in their house, and just it's their world. They're far away from society as a whole, and in that way, they kind of still do it. Now it's in a big theme park because that's kind of your comparison. When it comes to Leatherface in the first one, it's almost like he's a child. And I don't disagree that it's different. It's like these people keep coming in his house, and he's like, why are these people here? And he's very panicked, and that's kind of a weird dichotomy with the fact that he's also a killer, who slaughters the people that he kills, and you'd think that he would be menacing or brutal, but really he's just a child, and that's what he knows. And in this one, I think that I don't know. it might be because he's diminished in the fact that they give him this love interest and it turns into kind of a lurid sexual interest that he enacts with the chainsaw often. I don't know that it's a better performance. I just think that I feel like a lot of them just kind of phoned it in, and the ones that did a good job were just crazy to begin with.
I would stress is not my favorite portrayal. Hopefully I didn't say it was my favorite portrayal.
No, you probably didn't. I didn't.
I think in terms of, let's put it this way, every other portrayal of Leatherface, even jumping to the remakes and the prequel and the most recent one, and obviously we've not seen the one that's about to come out where he's a teenager, which is a terrible idea, but all the other ones hark back to Gunnar Hansen's performance. All of them try and replicate Gunnar Hansen's performance, apart from Bill Johnston in this movie. He's the oddity out of the whole group, in a way which, like I say, it stands out to me. I think I do think you're right in pointing out that there are actors in this movie that are, kind of just there for the cash and not there for the art. I think it's an interesting performance. And another thing you hit on the head, which I totally agree with, and it's one of the reasons I have issues with certain horror franchises, is when you bring in another villain, so to speak. This is Chop Top's movie, really. Chop Top's the one that's quoted. Chop Top's the one that's, on pretty much every fan art, picture of this movie. When you bring in any second kind of antagonist into a movie, you lessen the role of the original antagonist. So the first movie, even though Leatherface is, in the background doing what he's doing and he's on the cover and all the rest, Leatherface should be an ancillary character in there, very much like Pinhead is in Hellraiser, but the fandom of that movie elevates that character to, he is our protagonist, he's the main thing about that movie, he's the one we're going to follow. And this movie, Chop Top, shares, he has probably more screen time, and is because he talks and he's over the top and all the rest, we have that thing that I think is very easy to overlook, Leatherface in this movie. And I think the fact that I notice it as much as I do is a credit to the performance.
My whole thing is part 2 is supposed to be as far away from the original as possible. It's almost making fun of itself. And that's I think what people really grabbed onto it is it's a retelling basically, and just taking it to a total wacky degree. It's not supposed to be picking up where part 2 left off, or part 1 left off, and like we do with other sequels. He wanted to make something so different from the original because he knew he couldn't compare to the original as far as recapture what happened on that. So that was always my take on it. He wanted to make something that kind of fit the times, which is, like I said, Evil Dead 2. It's like comparing Evil Dead 1 and Evil Dead 2 to each other. Same kind of difference. It's fodder. It's entertainment. That's what it's for.
Yeah, the canon thing that you guys were talking about earlier on. I mean, Hooper's past with canon is the stuff of legend. I mean, canon basically paid for the obscene amount of narcotics that went up that man's nose. Pretty much, he's one of the main reasons that company doesn't exist anymore, because the amount of money they ploughed into movies that he made that did not return. Which I funnily enough, like, history's been the judge of those movies. Life Force, I think, is a fantastic movie, but at the time it flopped horribly. Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2 is now a cult phenomenon. Flopped horribly. He really kind of pushed the boundary of what he could do. I mean, if you look at Reanimator, for all its goofiness, is still an intensely focused story. Stuart Gordon does like everything you can do within that movie in terms of making it over the top and out there and wacky and funny and all the rest. But it never really loses itself. It remains like a solid structure. Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2 loses itself about 3 or 4 times in the film in this movie, and I get the feeling that he would, Hooper was just like, right, I don't have anything written down on the page now, so right, what I want from you, Hopper, is I want you to come in with 2 chainsaws and just ad lib, just go for it, just see whatever you think of. And I think there are whole sections of Texas Chainsaw Massacre that really feel unorganized, disjointed, and somehow it helps it, I think, but it does feel a lot of the time like the inmates are running the asylum on the set.
I think the scene where he goes to buy the chainsaws is unbelievable. It's just so great, man. And what's great about it, especially here in America, back in that time, we had stores that looked like that, where you just walked in, there was, over in a corner, there was a whole section of just chainsaws or whatever. And, you know, I don't know that you'd go out front and chop a log with it, but there was stores. There's something that felt really real about what was going on there until he went outside. And, that scene's just incredible. I just love it.
Well, and it's Dennis Hopper being Dennis Hopper, too. When he walks into a room, you don't know what he's going to do. So yeah, absolutely. That's one of the ones I remember being a kid and seeing this movie. I remember the nighttime truck versus car.
Oh yeah.
You know, with the dead man dance where Leatherface has his like dead man costume where he's got the dead man in front of him and all that. I remember that vividly, and I also remember him going out front and whacking the crap out of that log with that giant lumber chainsaw.
Right.
And as silly as it is, you know, it just stuck with me this many years.
So I think that's why we still end up talking about it, because to me, the first image I think of is that truck going in reverse alongside of that car on that bridge. Like you said, the dance that's going on, but dude loses top of his head. That stuff just is so vivid in my mind. I guess because I'd never seen anything like that at the time.
Yeah,
Anybody?
absolutely.
Definitely. No, I 100% agree.
Well, and so the next reason I've got is the over bow-legged cowboys in Lefty's in Lefty's hotel. There are two of them. They got an arm around each other. They're going to Mac on Stretch, and they're walking down the hallway, and he gives them a look, and they just kind of stumble off the other direction. But man, those guys must have been riding some humongous bulls or something, because their legs are like 6 feet apart.
And you got Toby Hooper there in the hallway that the guy throws the beer bottle at him, and he comes like, "Whoa,
yeah.
What?"
I just love this idea of Tobe Hooper thinking, I'll do a Hitchcock, you know. I'll just appear in the movie. That'll be fine, won't it? So it's glorious, because part of you thinks, you know, is it planned or was it accidental? And knowing what he's like as a director, it wouldn't surprise me if he was accidentally in that shot.
Well, and speaking of Hitchcock, the when they leave the radio station and she's following them to their stomping grounds at Battleland, their Nom World, the music when she's driving,
right,
it is dead up from the original Psycho. It's that music that she's driving to, and there's still the heist plot in Psycho.
Yeah.
I heard it, and as a kid, I probably never would have noticed it, but today I certainly did. And I wondered if it was just, we already have like some suspenseful driving music, we'll just throw that in there, or if it was intentional.
You just don't know when to watch that. Reasons to watch this movie: it didn't get released in the UK in the year it came out. I think if you're in the UK, now that you have the Blu-ray and stuff like that are out, you get to watch the movie uncut. It wasn't released. I mean, the BBFC in this country wanted to basically chop, I think it was about 25 minutes out of the movie, which had already been ridiculously chopped by Canon. Wow. So the movie essentially got pulled from UK release, which a lot of people don't know. So yeah, I think reasons to watch it is now in the UK. You can own it, well, fully uncut to the way it was released in it. Yeah, right. Canon released it, which is a treat. But I still struggle to get my head around what is it in this movie that, you know, the BBFC tried to cut more stuff out of, because it's, you know, Reanimator got through, Evil Dead 2 got through. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Those movies were not banned on the level, or, you know, demanded huge amounts of cuts. Reanimator did get quite a bit of cuts, but nothing on the level of 5 minutes.
Man, I mean, to me, Reanimator is just on another level as far as gore.
Yeah.
Compared to this one. That's incredible.
It's weird. I think it's all to do with, I don't know, maybe it's that idea of being focused again. Like Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2 is kind of like a weird, surreal nightmare. It just happens to be a slightly weird, surreal, funny nightmare. Whereas you watch Reanimator, it's clearly a horror movie. So
And it could be by just name association too, because the first one was such a classic.
First one was banned in the UK.
Right. So probably just because it was the second one, they're already going to look at it with a microscope more than they would something else.
Yeah, I was going to ask if the original Texas Chainsaw Massacre was released, because I could see how the type of horrifying gore that's in this one, where it's basically treating people as if they're in a slaughterhouse. That's definitely what makes the first one so jarring, is because, you got Grandpa coming in to deliver the final blow, and the idea that these people are just meat.
Right.
It's still there. I mean, as silly as the second one is, it continues that thread. Right, so if that's what's disconcerting, then I can see how censors would see the same thing in this movie as well.
I think,
but maybe they let it through because there's so much goofiness that they can just let it through and cut that stuff out.
Right. Yeah, I mean, anyone that watches that first Texas Chainsaw Massacre walks away with the opinion that movie is like a bathtub full of blood, in terms of how much, and there really isn't. There's a couple of teaspoonfuls of blood in the entire Texas Chainsaw Massacre, but it's the psychological trauma of watching the movie that's the scary part. And Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2 definitely ups the gore and all the rest, but that first movie was banned for over a decade. Right. It remained on the banned list, and that predates like video nasties and stuff like that. It was just banned. You could not see the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. But the second one, instead of getting banned, they just held it back until they could release it at a later time with less severe cuts, because that changes year on year. Definite reason to watch it if you're in the UK is get a copy of it now, because you get to see it the way it was intended.
Man, if there was only a podcast out there that talked about all the movies that were banned in England and talk about the nasty list. Oh, wait a minute, there is, Danny.
Yeah.
It's called Doing the Nasty, and I think Duncan McLeish is on there with Andy Blockley.
Oh, you don't have a voice of him. Please tell me you don't have a voice of him.
No, I was going to say right, Andy Blockley.
The last time I was on here, he did J.W. Pepper, and I'm still trying to get my head around that.
For Highlander. So I've got in my notes here, and it's not one of the reasons to watch it, but I do want to get you guys' opinion on it. Does this movie strike you as a lot like Nothing But Trouble? And Nothing But Trouble, the Dan Aykroyd movie.
Right.
Yeah, they go to that town where they're basically the law and the judge, and
it kind of feels like that for sure.
There's even a grandpa in a wheelchair, and
now you're mentioning it, there's quite a lot of similarities. What one came out first?
I think it came out before Nothing But Trouble.
Yeah.
So it certainly did.
You think the filmmakers may have watched Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2 and went,
Well, it's Dan Aykroyd's brother, and he wrote Nothing But Trouble. So maybe they were sitting around saying, let's just remake Texas Chainsaw Massacre Part 2.
And then Aykroyd's like, no, man, I want to do Dr. Detroit Part 2.
Let's get John Candy in there. Smells like Sao Paulo.
Oh, I wanted to bring up this, since we're talking about this. One thing to stop and watch, I call it the chop top stunt. Oh. At the end, when he's fighting Stretch up there at the top and then he falls. Have y'all really watched that guy, whoever it is that's falling down through there? That's pretty remarkable.
Yeah, that was one of my points. Is the end of this movie, like the very final sequence, is so wonderfully, weirdly nihilistic, considering the journey you've went through to get to that point. It's just a really weird kind of, almost the sort of thing you would have seen at the end of like a B movie in the 1950s, like a sci-fi sort of. But at the end, they're all creatures, like something like Invasion of the Body Snatchers, just like weirdly surreal sequence of her climbing up, once again, like we mentioned, something that doesn't make sense. This kind of hill kind of structure thing, which, why is that there? And where is this movie actually taking place? Is that I've never been to Texas, but can't imagine Texas looks much like that. And if it does, I'd be wanting to move out of Texas. Sorry if I've offended any of your Texas listeners, any of those Texans. But the end of this movie really ramps up into like it's almost like a completely different movie. The last 5 minutes of this movie feel like it was like no one had decided what they were going to do at the end, and they just tagged on an idea, which they may have very well done.
It's like Mad Max with bare light bulbs hanging from the ceiling and some kind of a giant fake mountain, and it's this theme park that I don't think exists in real life. And And they've kind of taken over this theme park and turned it into this just nightmare hellscape.
Yeah.
I will have to say, though, close to here at Reelfoot Lake, there's some places that are like these kind of little theme park areas that kind of look like this and feel like it. I don't know about the inner structure of it, but for me, that kind of hits home because we grew up going and riding little bitty miniature trains and stuff around areas that look like this thing. So, they are real.
We had Opryland, but
no, it's nothing like Opryland. No, this thing is like, you can tell somebody just came out with some plaster and just built a wall and drew some scary faces on it and said, "Come on down, ride the train."
They're like giant miniature golf courses.
Right.
Yeah.
So, I mean, these things are out there. So these structures were built in the 60s into the 70s, and they were all run down by that point, and the place is shut down. And they just leave them there. And that looks like what this thing is. So, I have witnessed things that look like this in Tennessee. So there you go, folks. I'm breaking the myth.
How about the fact in this movie that Chop Top is almost like a prophet, and that when he's in the station, he has to hear the music from. He asked for the soundtrack from Rambo 3, and Rambo 3 wasn't made when this movie came out. It was made like about 2 or 3 years after this movie, which is. Did Toby Hooper know something?
Maybe so. He knows the future.
Maybe he knows the future. But yeah, I think that's quite funny because it's clearly a joke at the expense of Rambo, but it's a joke that happened to actually happen. There you go.
I think it might have been more along the lines of the joke that, from Spaceballs, where it's, "And coming soon, Rocky 9,000. The belief was that there would be a Rambo 2 in the near future, or Rambo 3 in the near future.
Right.
He could have been a prophet. I mean, he probably was on something that made him think he saw the future.
Maybe when he scratched his plate with his coat hanger, maybe it picked up some future rays, future transmissions from an antenna, like a really bad antenna.
And being that he speaks of the Rambo 3 soundtrack, I've got it down at the bottom of my notes. The soundtrack for this movie, man, it's like, who's the big hot band right now?
Yeah.
Tim Buck 3. So you got a Tim Buck 3 laden soundtrack with one Oingo Boingo song, a couple of Concrete Blondes, which at this time, the only other movie they were recognized in was The Party Animal.
Oh, God.
And then at the end of it, this really bad reggae-sounding song. And I was like, man, what is this crap? This sounds like a really bad Sting. It was Stuart Copeland. And I was like, no!
Everybody's got to get paid, man. Everybody's got to get paid.
So yes, there is an official soundtrack to Texas Chainsaw Part 2 with legitimate artists on it. That's pretty bizarre.
Easy, man, honestly. What a time.
I got to say, the movie was starting to go down, it was starting to go too far for me. And it kind of came back when Dennis Hopper found the wheelchair. Like that moment, the movie ceased. Like maybe that's where, like you said, they were just letting the movie make itself. And then and there's the part where there had been a previous mentioning that his brother's kid was killed by chainsaw maniacs, which probably does happen in Texas. And then he finds the wheelchair, and then you're like, oh yeah, his brother was somehow tied to the first movie. And then you think of the first movie, because up until that point, I almost don't even equate the two of them as being in the same world.
Right. And that's what I was saying. And that's why they had to throw that in there, is to give you a reason of why is Dennis Hopper so bent on chasing these people down? Well, he killed his brother, Franklin, back in the day. So, yeah.
And it's that kind of, once again, you mentioned Rob Zombie, but it's that idea as well. When you look at the tonality of House of a Thousand Corpses and The Devil's Rejects, tonally, those movies are completely different. But the fact that you have William Forsythe's character is the brother of the sheriff that dies in the first movie, and that, in this movie, wreaking his unholy vengeance is, you're 100% right. Rob Zombie rips off this movie horribly. For shame, Rob Zombie, you're Dracula. I love the movie, and even I find myself drifting off at points and stuff.
Sure.
check things about the room, and it's just the movie is very unfocused until it is focused, and when it is focused, it's focused.
And again, with the retelling from that point on, to me, I mean, look at the things that happen with you get the dinner scene again. Kind of the same thing. Grandpa coming out the wheelchair, whacking her in the head. She gets away. You've still got the scene, instead of it being, for the guy from the first movie, you got Chop Top strapping her across the back with the razor, which in the first movie, she's running out to the road, and he's behind her, and he's just whacking her in the back with the razor. In this one, she's trying to crank the chainsaw. She gets it cranked, knocks Chop Top out of there, and then she does the Leatherface dance at the end. So it's still taking those things from the first movie and retelling it.
Yeah, I have two notes that pertain to that directly. One is it's the same shtick, just not as suspenseful.
Right.
I mean, it maybe because you know what's going to happen, or maybe because you've seen it before, or maybe just because everything's so over the top, you're already desensitized. And the first one does a great job of just making you off kilter and unsettled the whole time. And the next note I have is at the end, it's a personal nightmare to have to pull start anything, that has that kind of engine under duress. It's like, if you don't start this lawnmower, the world's going to end. I have a hard enough time starting those pull starts without there being some kind of duress. Those things are crazy inefficient.
Well, and the ending of it too gives you that ending that was starting to happen a lot at this point. Because remember, our favorite actor Corey Feldman, what he did.
You mean our favorite singer?
Favorite singer, actor, dancer. Corey Feldman, he can do it all.
Poet,
and he makes an appearance on episode 19, folks, if you haven't checked it out. Just like he did in the Friday the 13th Part 4. At the end of it, you think, well, maybe he's gone insane and he's going to be the killer now. They kind of set it up where Stretch could take it from this point, because you get that mad, maniacal look in her eyes, and she's got the chainsaw. That was just kind of a trend of the time. So, again, those things work just because those were the happening themes of the time. So nothing new there, but it was just, I don't know. It was an 80s flick. Joe Bob Briggs likes it.
Well, that does bring it up a notch, actually, for me. I have a great deal of respect for Joe Bob Briggs. All right, so my reasons. I got Stretch the DJ. Duncan had Chop Top, who is number 6 on my list of things. And of course, you got Dennis Hopper. I've got Leatherface's dead man costume and the guy with the holographic sunglasses. I've got the over bow-legged guys at the hotel. We have a descent into madness into kind of a Mad Max Texas theme park arena where all bets are off. People are just meat. We haven't even mentioned the whole fact that this guy's making his money selling prize-winning chili.
Oh, God, yeah.
That's one of them there peppercorns.
When we get into the deep analysis of this, we really need to come back to the fact that it's, I want to say that Tobe Hooper probably had a plan, but I think it's just a big joke.
Yeah.
I think that ultimately he was like, here are the movies we're making now. And he got, Golan Globos over here saying, make us a movie, man. And he just made it as crazy as they let him. When Dennis Hopper chops open that wall and a whole bunch of guts just come out of it.
Yeah.
I mean, like, how is that even anything? If you're slaughtering people for meat, and the meat is your bread and butter, not to be punished on that, but like, if the meat that makes your chili is all that's important to you, how's it in the walls? It's just ridiculous craziness. And they put you in the middle of it, and they kind of harken back to the first one a couple of times, and then they just let you do whatever you're going to do with it. I mean,
well, that's what happens when you're on coke, man, because when Bob Ezrin did The Elder with Kiss, he thought it was a good idea. When Tobe Hooper made Texas Chainsaw 2, he said, it'd be cool if there's blood come out of the mouth of one of the mouths on the wall. It's a painting, and you kick it, and guts come flying out. Hey, Tom, you think you can pull that off? Yeah, I can do that, Tobe.
Well, and then you got it was part 3 where Leatherface was like King Arthur, and there was a silver chainsaw. I mean,
that's just the promo. That's just the promo, though.
It's just the point that the mythology had taken over, and any legitimate frightening elements to it were just going to go to the wayside, because they were looking for more jump scares and shock attacks, and it's fun to watch for the fact that it's just crazy,
right?
But as far as it being scary, I don't know that it ever will be.
It's not scary, but those images, like you said, stay in your head. So it did something.
Yeah, but I think it's almost unintentional, because I think if you look at Tobe Hooper as a director, you look how many films that guy's actually done, his kind of hit ratio where everything actually works, or he makes a movie like legitimately love, is very, very low. I mean, he's made a lot of really, really, really bad movies. When he's on point, he makes some of, he's up there. He is a quote unquote master of horror, but this dude has made some pretty awful kind of trite movies in the past. And Texas Chainsaw Massacre, I think Danny's spot on. I think Cannon were throwing so much money anywhere, and he did not even. It was either one or two things. Either he said, they approached him and said, "We want you to make a horror movie," and he was like, "That. Well, I suppose we could make Texas Chainsaw 2, which is going to be greenlit anyway, because it's easy to market Texas Chainsaw 2." Either that, or it was all Hooper just wanting to see how far he could push things, in terms of just ridiculous, over the top, almost as a statement of, "Look what we can. I can make anything." And it feels like that. It does feel like that. I can't imagine, like Danny was saying, it was ever scary. But it's so weird as a movie. It's very difficult not to continue talking about it. 30, 40 years on, 30 years on. It's very difficult not to talk about it because it's so weird. And in a decade where movies were weird, Texas Chainsaw Massacre is almost at the top of the pile as one of these weird oddities that cost quite a bit of money, has production, has names attached to it, has named actors attached to it, had really good special effects, and is just, in any other scenario, this movie is it's a piece of rubbish. Right. But for whatever reason, it seems to endure with the credibility of fans in a weird way. If this movie came out now, everyone would hate it. If this movie came out the decade before, everyone would hate it. If it came out in the 90s, everyone would hate it. But the fact it came out in the 80s, it works.
It's just the right time. Yeah. And we're totally forgetting the fact, we haven't brought it up. We keep talking about the effects, but this is Tom Savini at the top of his game during this time period. So some really good effects as far as I'm concerned. Peeling off LG's face and all that stuff. I mean, there's some stuff that make you go, at times,
And what about that guy just waking up long enough to free her hands and then dying?
That's awesome, man.
But there's also the fact, and I think Duncan hit the nail on the head. This movie is an epitome of the time it came from. Because put it next to Friday the 13th Part 6.
Yeah.
Oh, here we go.
Friday the 13th Part 6 is arguably my favorite one.
Hold on now. We're going to talk about ridiculous. And how ridiculous this movie is, and you're going to bring up Friday the 13th Part 6.
I'm comparing them as signs of where the 80s were.
Okay, I'm with you.
They had gotten to the point where they were trying for any legitimate scares, and they had gotten to the point where they were accelerating everything to a level where they could just, like Duncan said, they were trying to see what they could get away with.
Right.
How big the body count, how many different kinds of crazy kills, how superhuman are the bad guys. It's not just a killer, and exactly who they are at the beginning. So it's not a mystery. It's just how many people can be mutilated, how many different ways.
That's all it was, man, about the body count, just like Ice-T.
So if you think about it in that way, that they were trying to find a vessel to carry as much of a body count as possible, then this movie's kind of genius.
To me, you nailed it, because when I think of this movie, I put it in the category of Friday the 13th Part 6, Part 7, those movies where it was just grab your popcorn, let's go have a good time, watch a goofy, gory movie. That's the way I see this movie.
Right, right. It's like a laughable, oh my God, I can't believe she got killed. Not oh my God, I can't believe she got killed. Yeah.
Batty. So okay. I think we all reached that agreement. Folks, if you're watching this or you want to watch this, that's what you need to be looking for. It is an entertainment movie. Yeah, it's cool because it ties in a bit to the folklore of Texas Chainsaw, but really this is its own thing. I think it's a lot of fun. It's a nonsense movie with Dennis Hopper in it and a Timbuk3 soundtrack. So let's give this thing a rating, man. What do you say?
Yeah, sure. I'm going to give it 6 bow-legged cowboys in hotel hallways throwing stuff at Toby Hooper.
I'm going to give it 7 French fry log cabins.
Oh, we should have mentioned that.
Yeah, LG is sitting making a log cabin out of French fries. That's pretty awesome.
Pretty good.
Duncan?
I give it 5 peppercorns from the chili.
Ooh,
we know what they really are.
All right, so as always, Brian Blessed, what do you think of Texas Chainsaw Part 2?
Let the combat begin! To the death!
Oh.
He sounded a little angry.
Well,
you imagine Brian Blessed in Texas Chainsaw 2. Oh my God. It's the only thing that's missing. It's the only thing.
Didn't Brian Blessed play Leatherface in that?
Yes.
Just get this idea of him trying to start that chainsaw.
Bubba's got a girlfriend.
I'm a killer with a chainsaw.
All right, we'll be right back, folks. Where is the one place to satisfy all your chainsaw needs? Cooter's Chainsaw Empire. Where is the best place that you can find the best price on 2-cycle fuel? Cooter's Chainsaw Empire. Where can you go shopping and spit on the floor? Cooter's Chainsaw Empire. That's right, Cooters. And we carry 16 brand name quality chainsaws in assorted sizes and colors, and all American made. None of that yin-yang stuff in here. And let me tell you, there are many uses for a chainsaw besides cleaning up your yard after a Texas tornado. From warning your neighbor that you mean business when you say, "Get out of my yard," to just a conversation piece over the fireplace, or even a family heirloom. Also, you can pick up a home light hedge trimmer for the missus. We even let you test them out right in front of the store so everyone can see the quality. So drive on down to Sawyer's Lane, turn right at the pond, and just a little jog by the honeysuckles and you'll see a great big cooter. Come on out, won't you? All right, welcome back to the second movie of episode 20 Pieces. It's one of a kind, folks, and I would say it's not for everyone, but I don't know. I'm a fan of it just because of. You think Texas Chainsaw 2 is crazy? Nah, this one's crazier. So yeah. So before we get into that, I don't know how Danny did it, but he actually tracked down. To do a synopsis, he tracked down Macaulay Culkin.
This is 1990's Macaulay Culkin. I've been left home alone to tell you about the movie Pieces. But first, a word of wisdom. As my Uncle Buck used to say, stay away from my girl, Richie Rich. Pieces is the story of the makings of E.T., the extraterrestrial, and the use of Reese's Pieces instead of M&M's. When M&M stepped away from the movie, Reese's Pieces stepped up, like a good son. What a page master. It's a fun movie with lots of behind-the-scenes info, and more than a few laughs. Well, I'm off to go hang out with Michael Jackson. See you soon. Macaulay out.
That could be the greatest thing that you've ever played on this show.
It wasn't just Macaulay Culkin. I actually tracked down 1990s Macaulay Culkin.
You used that,
not the 36-year-old that is today.
You used the time machine, didn't you?
Yeah. There we go. The worst thing about the time machine is, just having to listen the whole time you're going back in time.
You can't shut it off. That's the thing, is once you try to shut it off, it just doubles it. You go faster in time, just like Huey Lewis. Gonna go back in time.
That's our. There's our next synopsis is from Huey Lewis in 1981.
All right, set your Wayback Machine. Okay, Duncan McLeish.
Yes.
Why do we watch Pieces?
The first reason you watch Pieces, and this is. But there's so many reasons you need to watch Pieces. Like the fact that we're condensing this down into. I have too much I want to say about this movie.
Hey, you take all the time you want, man.
The first reason to watch Pieces is the obvious one. It's the one that everyone's going to jump to, or is it? Is Linda Day George? It's Mary Riggs.
All right.
I don't know if everyone else is good with that, but she's one of the reasons to watch me. She's attractive in a weird sort of way. She's too old to be like a world champion tennis player, but in this movie, she is. And she's also a cop because tennis players don't make enough money. I'm not too sure about that. And she's going to go undercover as a tennis coach, and she is legitimately the worst tennis player we see from just her side of the court.
That tennis match, man, it's just
she
the
loves
same
him
scenes.
high and soft, man. She loves him high and soft.
just no. Also taking into account that oh god, she is overdubbed horribly, overacts to a level which doesn't even sense in the movie. And the infamous bastard scene is one of the greatest. It's one of the greatest moments captured in cinema.
It
I'm
really
not even mean that sarcastically. I mean, it is one of the greatest scenes in cinema history, and I put that against any other scene in history. It is up there. It just is so over the top, and it doesn't make sense, and it is the most wonderful thing. And she is the reason behind that. Her character, Mary Riggs, in this movie is the weirdest plot device to get a cop undercover ever. Of all the other ways they could have done it, this is a huge school, but they're going to find a way to get a tennis court in there and bring in a tennis teacher. It's just,
who's an undercover cop?
Yeah,
she may be the only character that is female in this movie that doesn't get completely naked too.
This is also.
I mean, maybe her and the secretary and everybody else. The clothes are off.
That stupid tennis match, though, man. It's like,
oh man,
they took like 2 or 3 scenes, period, and just spliced them over and over and over. And then getting that ball back and forth.
What I like about it is they keep zooming round to the crowd, and everyone's head moves at different times to follow the ball. Like, they're not all moving at the same time to follow this. They're moving very slow to begin with, so the ball's not travelling fast. But there are people that follow what you imagine would be the line of the ball, and others have still not started moving yet.
The fact that they're up on a high rise and you keep seeing the ball pass back and forth, and when you look at them on the court, they're barely hitting it over the net.
Yeah, and the fact that there's only 20 people watching that match, but when one of them scores a point, it sounds like Wimbledon, blows my mind.
I was going to say, I've got it in my notes, for 20 attendees, they have quite a fanfare.
It's huge.
It's totally, it's like you can see all the people in one frame and they're all in one row. And then like when there's a point, it's like, like the Olympics or something.
It's what it should have sounded like. It wasn't. So yeah, Linda George in this movie is one of the top reasons to watch it for all the reasons. And she doesn't come into it until a good 25 minutes into the movie, but when she does, it just becomes a whole lot more wonderful.
My first reason to watch Pieces is Willard, the crazy gardener.
Yep.
Played by Paul L. Smith. Right. I mean, I knew him from, I recognized him immediately. The way that he like turns his head and looks at everybody from the side of his head, like both of his eyes like point in one direction, like he's suspicious of everybody who asks him any question ever. Yeah, and he's caressing lovingly his chainsaw. Like, oh, he's got to be the killer. Look at that guy. I mean, he is great.
The best
and every
question
time he comes in, I love him.
the best question he gets asked, Willard, don't you run the music?
Oh God!
No, they don't let me touch the electronics.
Willard's name's been changed in this movie to Obvious Red Herring. That should have been his name.
Yeah,
it's amazing. From the first moment he is on screen, you're like, this guy, this guy has a chainsaw. This guy looks shifty. I think this is a red herring.
He looks over at two kids over there having sex in the garden, and he's like,
messing up my landscaping. Oh.
Well, Willard, shouldn't you move on to the next job or something? No, I kind of like it here.
So, first thing for me, I don't know this is top on my list of why to watch it, but it kind of gets stuck in your head, and that's this right here.
Oh, yeah.
I don't even know why they just bother turning the thing off, because it plays like every 20 seconds.
Yeah, this music's done by a guy called Cam. I don't know if he scored anything else. If this is the only thing he scored, then he did like a wonderful job of it. It is the weirdest score for a movie I think ever, because it's like a really bad goblin.
Right.
You know what I mean? It's like they were like, we can't afford Claudio Simonetti, so we'll get this guy in who has like 7 sounds on a keyboard, and that's essentially what does the whole soundtrack out of.
And it's dead up, Dawn of the Dead. You know.
Oh God,
doom, 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 doom. It's nonstop. It's more than the song that's in The Howling 2. I can tell you that.
Duncan, what's your second reason?
Right, my second reason to watch this movie is the Kung Fu instructor scene.
That was my next one.
Because just when you think you're watching pieces, you're like, I have not a clue where this is going. I don't know why they're doing it, but at least this movie doesn't have martial arts. And then all of a sudden, martial arts. And not only martial arts, very bad martial arts. So Linda D. George is walking along. All of a sudden, this small Asian man jumps out of some bushes and tries to attack her. We don't know why, but he is quite violent towards her. And then she eventually manages to sidestep and hit him between the legs, which makes him fall over just before Kendall arrives. And we're going to talk about Kendall. We need to talk about Kendall. It's like we need
Kendall
to talk about
Kevin. On a motorcycle too. Like he's
which
like,
sounds
hey,
like
let me ride this motorcycle down the alleyway. What's going on? Oh, that's just my kung fu instructor.
That's it. He's like, this is like he tries to physically assault a woman. He plays it for some bad chop suey that he's had, and all is forgiven in this movie. I know it was a different time, but I'm just saying, attempted rape is still attempted rape, regardless what you've ate beforehand. It's just it is one of the weirdest scenes.
It almost gets in there with what is it, Cabin Fever, with the pancakes thing.
Yeah, it's surreal watching it because it never touched on again. We what kind of university is this that there's a kung fu instructor for kung fu class? Where are you going today? I have 7 periods of kung fu.
It's close to the end too. Like the movie's been on for a while when this happens, and it's just kind of out in space. It doesn't really pertain to anything, like you said.
It doesn't fit. I mean, Kendall's driving around on a motorbike, which deliberately sounds like the chainsaw. You think that obviously that maybe someone might be attacking Linda D. George character because you can hear this in the background, this kind of chainsaw sound, and then as like a false jump scare, maybe.
Right.
Professor Wu or whatever his name is comes jumping at a bush, and it's just a ridiculous scene, but not the most ridiculous scene in this movie, and that's what I love about it. In any other movie, this is the most ridiculous scene, but in this movie, it's mid-tier ridiculous. And yeah, I think it's just one of many, many, many scenes that people will always talk about when they talk about this movie is, what about that kung fu scene? Oh yeah, that movie has a kung fu scene. It's just weird.
My second reason for watching Pieces is jazzercise.
Oh yeah.
There's like an exceeding amount of jazzercise in both like a jazzercise class scene, and then like there's one chick who's just jazzercising for a long period of time down a hallway.
Right.
And you've got like this soccer cam on her, and she's like dancing her way to the bathroom, which is down a hall and a flight of stairs and down another hall and through a way, and like she's like a mile and a half away from the class in this dark hallway and at night.
Now kick
I don't know what to say
turn,
about that.
and 7 and 8 and kick and turn. Now turn, kick, kick, turn. Kind of like the Pirate King workout, kind of.
Yeah.
This is the only kind of dance class area where the changing rooms aren't off the side of it. To get to like any sort of bathroom, you have to walk legitimate distance. What I love about that as well is later on we have that, the woman that's like doing the jazzercise, so to speak, the kind of sexy dance that she's doing, and the killer, we assume is coming to get her, but then decides to, instead of entering the door that he's outside of, walk around the building to come in the other door, which takes 3 minutes.
It's forever. It's like you could have just hid behind the door when she comes out, grab her.
Yeah.
But no, he sneaks around the other side. Well, what I love before that is he's watching them when they're practicing, and at that point, I guess he goes back home, puts a couple more pieces of the puzzle together and says, I guess I'll go back now. And the big takeaway from this movie, folks, if you learn anything from the Hell Ming Power Hour, this is what you're going to learn. It is near impossible to put a puzzle together with big rubber gloves on.
There's a bit where he actually gets frustrated. He just bangs it.
He's banging on that thing, man.
That's why he's so angry. He can't get the puzzle together. If he take the gloves off, he may have a chance.
But that woman that he's chasing down this is brilliant. The woman that he's chasing down all the area, like coming through the door and all the rest, eventually manages to escape him. And then she goes into a lift or an elevator.
Oh, gosh.
And the killer goes in with her with a giant chainsaw hidden behind his back, which he then pulls out in front of her. She's still not alarmed until he revs up. It is just amazing.
It's a big, bright yellow chainsaw. I mean, how do you can't hide this behind your back?
He's just got it tucked back there, like, oh, don't worry about what I've got behind my back. It's just a 3.5 foot long chainsaw.
Yeah, like she knows who the killer is, and this is the weird thing about the movie. She recognizes a killer. When you realise who the killer is in this movie, there is no reason at all that guy should have a chainsaw ever. There's no logical reason why you would be looking at that guy saying, oh, you've got a chainsaw, that's okay, please come into my elevator. It makes no sense. It's amazing.
And I love too, going back to the dance part, she's in there dancing by herself and the music's real loud, and she goes and turns off a jam box that's not even 12 inches long. Normally, you would think we'd have the Hell Ming going off the whole time, but we're not making this stuff up. This is actually the movie. We're not faking it, folks. How about the waterbed? That's on my list.
Oh,
I've never seen a movie make such a big deal about a waterbed.
There's nothing better than smoking weed and having sex on a waterbed. Who are you people?
Which is a line that's recreated in, I'm sure it's Final Girls, the Final Girls, the movie that came out last year. A brilliant kind of slasher comedy, but it's like PG-13, and they repeat that line in that movie, and I'm like, that's the extent of how this movie's impact is on cinema. Is it's a movie that's just known. We know there's a waterbed there. It's mentioned much earlier in the movie, but it's mentioned in such a way that it's a kind of funny line. You forget that there's a waterbed in this. Why would there be a waterbed in this, in this university? So you forget it, and then later on they use it for a death scene. And I'm like, that someone has wanted a waterbed death scene. But the thing about this, which makes it unusual from everything else, is everything else in this movie is just flung in. Like Kung Fu Guy appears out of nowhere. But the fact to make reference to this waterbed earlier on in the movie shows a surprising level of forethought in the script, which the rest of the movie doesn't have at all. It's like, they'll not believe there's a waterbed here unless we mention it, but the Kung Fu instructor's fine.
And one thing I love about this, the killer not only can use a chainsaw, but he is the master of the pool net. He takes a net for like getting, I don't know, float toys or something out of the pool. You know, it's just the one that's only about, I don't know, 12 inches around. And he puts it on her head and she acts like she cannot get out.
When he pulls her up on the edge there too, she's so exhausted. She can't move while he goes over and picks up the chainsaw and starts it up and then comes back. Yeah, like, you know, she was really swimming hard against that net.
But when she's like, when her body's discovered, they bring Professor Brown down because he knows a bit of anatomy, and they ask him, in his professional opinion, could the chainsaw, the bloody chainsaw lying next to the body, hacked up by a chainsaw, could the chainsaw be the weapon?
Could a chainsaw cause these types of injuries?
It's a bloody chainsaw
it's
lying
there on the floor.
right beside the body, which has been hacked up. And they ask him that. And he's like, you're clearly to the layman. But like, it's just, it's amazing. Right, I'll hit you with one right now. Reasons to watch this movie. We said this off air, but this is basically like a play on the Giallo. That's what it is. It's a gloved killer. I mean, for all intents and purposes, this movie, even as absurd as it is a giallo, because it's a gloved killer who has had a traumatic event that's happened to him as a child, which sparks back up later on in his life to cause these killings. There's a police procedural where someone is brought into to work with the police that shouldn't be working in the police, and the killer makes no sense at the end. So for all intents and purposes, this is a giallo. In fact, if you weren't a purist, you'd be fine by saying Pieces is a giallo. But we have the traumatic event at the beginning, which we see, which is very deep red, and then the catalyst for causing these things to happen is our killer sees a girl, and this is amazing because this is right out of a cartoon. The killer sees a girl on rollerblades or roller skates come down a hill and go through a plate glass which two workers are carrying across the street. She smashes through this, which recalls the image of his mum smashing a mirror as a child, which kicks off all the killing again. But the fact that this is in this movie, someone goes through a plate glass that two workers is carrying. Like, right, I mean, the glass might as well had Acme written through it.
Exactly.
The fact that happens in this movie as a catalyst is right away, right at the very start of this movie, sums up the absurdity of the entire movie. From that point onwards, you should be sitting there as an audience going, oh, this is something different, and I don't know if I like it. But the longer you watch it, the more you start to like it.
That's the beauty of it, because I'm going to take a page out of Duncan's playbook here. But when's the first time you saw this movie, Duncan?
Oh, I remember this was on. I got into horror really young, and I remember this was on a home video set that someone had. I want to say it was either one of my best friends or was my babysitter, and it was I don't know where they got it from, but it was on with. What was the other movie? Oh, it was an equally ridiculous movie. But there's an equally ridiculous movie on it. It was like a double thing on this video. And this was the second movie. And I remember we always watched the first movie, but I can't remember. That goes to show how profound Pieces is I remember that movie, and it's the one that no one should remember. The other movie was the bigger name. And watching it and then not seeing it for years after it, but having like snippets of this movie in my head,
right,
that I could remember specific scenes. And then it wasn't until I was maybe early 20s that I come back across this movie. Once again, I was looking at bootleg and watched it then and going, because I thought the clips were from about 3 or 4 different movies. I'd never pieced them together, and watching it and going, oh, this is all one movie. You know what I mean? This is all one movie. That you would be the same. You remember a movie from your childhood, and you'd be like that. I need to try and track down this movie. All I remember is this one scene. Well, I thought I had about 6 movies worth of these one scenes, and they were all in the same movie. And it has been. I got the DVD when Arrow released it. which is a couple of years ago now. It was one of the first titles they put out. I've seen this movie easily over 50 times.
Wow.
Pieces is like, I watch it maybe 2 or 3 times a year because it's like chicken soup for the soul for me. Whenever I'm feeling down, you put on Pieces. Whenever you want to laugh, you put on Pieces. I guarantee in October I will watch Pieces again. Even though I've just watched it to record this show, I will watch it again before the year is out. And I've already seen it twice this year.
Man.
And never get bored of it. Never get bored of it.
I probably saw this back in 86, 87, VHS boom. You picked up anything that had a halfway crazy looking cover on it. So that was my exposure to it. The reason I got into all this is because I think this is the first time Danny saw it. And like, he was even halfway through it and he's already sending me a message saying, this thing is bad.
I gave it the whole movie though. To be fair, I mean, I'm not going to not watch the whole thing. And it started to grow on me near the end. I just, like I said, I had some misconceptions about what it was. Yeah. I did think it was a parody. And then when I realized it was just made to be like, I kind of gave it a little slack. And like I said, it didn't take me long to come up with several reasons to watch. Being a layman, being this the first time, I had to kind of come to it.
So I'm trying to defend the thing while he's watching it and going, no, man, it's fun. It's fun. It's all about when you see it, how you see it, and all those things. So yeah, I mean, it's not good. It's not good by any means.
I sat down with the boss from my show's horror novice. It seemed very well. The whole purpose of the things I do in my show with him is to bring him into horror. We did a commentary on PCs, so we did like a video commentary, and up until this year, he was of the opinion that it was one of the worst films he's ever seen.
Right.
He hated it. He didn't get the humor. He didn't understand what was going on at all in the movie. He just thought it was just like the worst movie he's ever seen. And I can't. What you understand is if you like Pieces, you can't defend Pieces to anyone,
right?
Because you're right. It is one of the worst. It's technically a terrible movie. The narrative is awful. The acting is atrocious by actors that in their day were turning in good. I mean, Christopher George, who we'll get on to because he's a must talk about. Christopher George had been in the
Fulci stuff. I mean,
the Fulci stuff. The name escapes me. The first one at the
Zombie
trilogy,
City of the Living Dead.
City of the Living Dead, and he's great in City of the Living Dead, which is the year before Pieces. So he makes City of the Living Dead, performs brilliant, makes this movie is not great by any stretch of the imagination. Linda George as well, great actress at the time, did a lot of genre stuff, terrible in this movie. Right. And it's like, so the acting's bad, the narrative's bad, the special effects are actually pretty good for the time, actually. I think they're well above average. Story doesn't make sense. The reveal of the killer's really bad. The last shot of this movie, which is something we're going to have to talk about, is so nonsensical. It makes everything else in the world make sense. That if anyone says that it's a bad movie, I cannot argue that. But it is so much fun to watch. It's like every scene, you're just like that. I don't know what's going to happen next. And even if you think you know what's going to happen next, it's not what happens next. Watching it for the first time as an adult, I can't even imagine how that would be at all. I can't put myself in that mindset. Because and to think of, well, people like Pieces. Why do people like Pieces? The thing I'll say is that my point on Pieces, really, really simple, and then I'll shut up because I'm talking too much, because I love this movie. Tagline for this movie. It has 2 taglines, and I think they're probably the greatest 2 taglines in cinema as well. First one, you don't have to go to Texas for a chainsaw massacre, which is like blatantly ripping off. There's a giant chainsaw on the front of the cover, and they mention the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. So I mean that's bad. You shouldn't do that, but they did it because they don't care. The second thing is just a simple tagline, and it's exactly what you think it is.
That's my favorite one.
And it's not. Pieces is not exactly what you think it is. Pieces could mean anything. I guarantee to anyone that hears the name Pieces that sits down to watch this movie, this is not what you think it's going to be like. It couldn't be. There's almost some sort of weird prowess in coming up with that, because Pieces is exactly what you think it is not anywhere near describing how bad this movie is. I love it though. It's great. Yeah. It's right to the point.
Me too. I'll tell you why I love it. one of the reasons I got is this movie is, like you said, is influential. But I think the pool throwdown, so when they when they capture Willard and they have the big fight scene, can only be described as the predecessor to the fight in Old Boy. Because they're jumping around, hitting him with boards, and they're surrounding him. And
yeah, in that scene, I totally thought of Tor Johnson, from the old monster from all the monster movies. He was a wrestler, right? I mean, I think George the Animal Steel played him when they did the Ed Wood movie,
right?
And brought him in.
I love the fact that you get that he only finally stops when someone pulls a gun on him and says, "Stop her! I'll blow your head off," and he's still giving that kind of squinty grimace thing over the top of his shoulder. Brilliant. Absolutely.
Actually, I've got that line written down right here where with my first reason as being Willard. He says, "Hold it, or I'll blow your brains out." And again, it's one of those canned, like they could have just had that soundbite from a cop show, just thrown it in there. Didn't even need a real cop with a gun.
You could have the one, "Don't even think about it, pal. Don't even breathe."
And he's one of the worst cops ever. He's like token, cannot be bothered. I am about 7 years over retirement age and I shouldn't be here. He's like a weird kind of, he looks like Frank Drebin, which instantly puts me kind of wee bit like you're going to crack funny jokes. But see later on when they're in the library and
the best.
Case files, and they bring in Kendall to work with him and he's like, do you want to be a police officer, do you? Like that. And then essentially the next thing he tells them is they need to get takeout food and drink lots of coffee. And I was like, yeah, you're pretty much summing up this is your career right here. And he doesn't find the clue that cracks the case either. It's Kendall that finds it. And Kendall finds that guy's been in there all day and found nothing. Kendall's in there for an hour and cracks the case. It's amazing.
Number one on my list is Sergeant Holden. That's my number one reason to watch this movie, because he is so, yeah, man, it's just another case. No big deal. And I love it when Christopher George calls him and says, "Well, take some uppers and get me a lead."
They throw in this weird, this movie has so many weird, sub-stories going on. And one of the sub-stories is that, Sergeant Holden is trying to get Lieutenant Bracken to stop smoking.
Right.
And so, they constantly have this conversation about him not having any, do you have a light or whatever? And he won't give him a light. And that's played through this movie more than once. So once again, this is someone has actually attempted to give these characters a bit more of a kind of three-dimensionality about them, which it blows my mind that happens. And that is a wee sub-story in this, because it keeps coming up. Sergeant Holden will not give him a lighter for his...
It's kind of like the detective in Deep Red, though, who's always eating. So
yes.
You can see where they... Again, to me, this is a guy that's a fan of these movies or wanted to make a movie that kind of fit into that genre. He just watched these other movies and tried to throw it all into one movie together. He tried to take a Fulci movie and an Argento movie and mash them together. And this is what you get.
Kind of reminds me of John Saxon saying, "See, the hat didn't come off my head. The hat didn't come off." But
that's not a hell movie, but that's really in a movie. It's awesome.
The next reason that I've got is when he's talking to our undercover cop, and he's having a long conversation about it in the middle of public, and the woman comes in, and mind you, at this point, I just still didn't know who the killer was. So the dean says to her, "I'm too busy to talk to anyone." He's in this conversation that's obviously casual, and she's like, "I have information, and I want to talk about the problems that are on the i.e. the murders." And he's like, "I'm too busy to talk to anyone right now." And that's his whole excuse. He doesn't even leave. He continues to talk to the undercover cop, and just kind of sends her off into the ether. And I decided that was a reason to watch it, because it's just, you have to see it to believe
bizarre.
it.
She looks weirdly, the reporter woman that asked those questions looks weirdly like Daria Nicolodi as well, which is really strange, because it once again has that kind of giallo feel. But she is in the police department earlier on,
right,
when
she recognizes Linda George.
Yeah, she was in the police office, and when she asks Christopher George about the murders, he says, these stories pop up on a campus every couple of months. So we're now living in a scenario that every couple of months there are stories that there are multiple students dying by being hacked up by chainsaws. Just like that thinking, ladies and gentlemen.
Here's my question. The girl's out playing tennis by herself on the court, hitting all the balls to one side, then running to the other side and hitting them back across the other side, playing, and then all of a sudden the music plays, she gets upset, and apparently when they play the music, it means it's time to take a shower. I haven't figured out the connection here of she hears the music and gets very upset, and it's shower time.
Well, that's what they do on college campuses and athletic programs. When your time is up on the court and you have to make way for conversations between undercover cops and deans, they play the music really loudly on the PA, and that signals, hit the showers there, cream puff.
All right. I just didn't understand. I'm not the collegiate type, so.
Yeah, I've spent many years in academic life. It's part of my research.
Which I'm not allowed to talk about.
Actually,
we don't discuss that.
I can't talk right now to anyone.
One of my reasons, and we've kind of touched on it, we have to talk about Kendall.
Right.
Kendall is a strange character when you put it out. So he's a bit of a ladies' man, we're led to believe, but there's a line and I've forgotten what it is, and I hate myself right now. When he's in the bed with the girl who wants more sex from him, and I can't remember what she says, is one of the worst sex lines ever.
Yeah,
she says you can gag me and then I won't make noise, something like that.
If we just do it again.
It's during the whole frontal male nudity scene too. He's out there.
Yeah. He whaps it out, but he's he's a ladies' man, but there's he apparently strikes out with quite a few ladies, but he kind of inserts himself into the conversation kind of early in the movie, in that he's the one that kind of helps Willard be caught. And then as soon as Lieutenant Bracken interviews him, Bracken's like, that this guy could be future police force material, maybe. So he's then brought in as the only person that now knows that Linda Day is undercover out with the faculty staff, which, once again, why you would do that is beyond me. Why would you tell the rest of the faculty there's an undercover cop here when the faculty are all suspects as well? But anyway, they do that anyway. And Kendall from then tries to hit on Linda Day, who's clearly about maybe 25 years older than him, although he doesn't look like he's the age to be at uni either. He looks like a wee bit older. But then they kind of have this weird sort of romance thing that goes on, and Kendall turns out to be a really effective cop, kinda, because the rest are ineffective, which makes him by proxy effective.
Right.
And he's just a weird character, because like we were saying in Giallos, it used to be in Giallos, it would be whoever the foreign person was in Italy would be involved. They would either see something they weren't supposed to see, or they would be involved, one of their friends would die or something would happen, and they would find themselves part of the police procedural, but they would never become part of the police force. And this movie, Kendall becomes part of the police force.
You got him going through secret files. He's just going through everything.
They give him access to the entire police archive.
They buy him some Wendy's. He's eating a Wendy's cheeseburger.
It's strange. And to take things into account as well, this movie is supposed to be shot in America. It was shot in Spain. It's clearly shot in Spain. The university campus does not look American. It looks Spanish. But they insert things into the movie, like Wendy's, for example, which you can't buy in Spain, to make it look like it's... You know what will give authenticity to this scene? Put a Wendy's in there. Americans love the Wendy's. You know what I mean? It's like... He's a really strange character, and this could be the first kind of example in a Giallo, I may be wrong, where at the end things don't turn out all right for Kendall. Kendall actually suffers a fate, some would argue, worse than death at the end of this movie. Not only is he traumatized because a body falls out of a mishmash pieced together body falls on top of him, which actually terrifies him. But in a weird bit of surrealism, at the end of this movie, that body then reanimates enough that the hand grabs his testicles and squeezes them till they burst, I think.
Right, sure.
Through his jeans, maybe. Kendall, in theory, should be the character that we follow with, that we associate with through the investigation. But that never really pans out because we don't spend that much time with Kendall. We end up spending time with everyone else. That you never really connect with that character. And at the end, he, like I say, he gets the...
Yeah, he becomes a soprano.
Yeah.
I think that he's an odd character choice. And he doesn't really add humor or likability or competence.
That's a big thing I had. I said the girls at this college don't have much to pick from because there's him and then his buddy that's just uber nerd.
It's a Poindexter,
yeah.
He's brilliant. He's like, see when he scares someone with the mask.
The Halloween mask. It's on my list.
Oh, it's absolutely wonderful.
I got you.
There's only like the 20 people at the tennis court to look at for the rest of the university staff and students. I don't know. Yeah, I agree with you. It's I guess Kendall was the cream of the crop there.
Kendall looks like a really poor man Steve Gutenberg as well.
Yeah.
It looks like a really bad Mahoney.
And speaking of cream, I wanted to bring this up. Segue.
Oh, God.
Nice.
The whole coffee scene with the killer.
That's amazing.
How do you like that? Oh, no sugar, lots of cream. He don't put anything in there but this drug. And she never once says, oh, you want some more? I'll go make you some more.
It's the fact that she finishes it like it's when he goes back into the kitchen the second time, he can't remember where he's put the drug, so he goes back in, he puts a cup down, he's trying to make this frantic second cup of coffee, and he's like, open this cup, it's not in that cupboard, it's up this cupboard, right, 2 drops, was it 2 drops, I can't remember, 3 drops maybe. It's hilarious. It's really actually is. The thing about this movie is at times it's unintentionally some of the funniest, like this to me on some level you could class pieces as a horror comedy because of how much nonsense here that makes you laugh, but it's all unintentional. And they do it, these scenes, I don't know what they're aiming for other than humour. Like, I don't know how you do this in any other way that you don't think audiences are just going to laugh at this man. It's like the gloves of the killer trying to hammer these jigsaw pieces in. That to me is humorous. I mean, there's no way to look at that scene as malicious. It has to be humorous. So they have all these scenes like in here, and that's brilliant. And God bless Linda Day George, but her paralysed acting is terrible. Is actually terrible. It's so bad. She's just lie still, but keep moving my mouth. Like that's not how those drugs work. You know, that's so bad, but so amazing. Oh.
I have to give it credit though, because the one scene to me that stands out in my mind is when he's chasing the girl off the tennis court after she's had her shower, which she's running like Danny said earlier with just no shirt. Everybody's naked most of the movie. And she goes in the locker room or whatever it is, and he comes through there with that chainsaw and like rips her right in half. The gore scene there was always the image that I have when I think of this movie, where they look in there and she's like in half and the blood's everywhere. I mean, it's over the top and looks pretty good.
It looks really good. Yeah, no doubt.
She wets herself as well, which is striking. Right. That's a striking image. I mean, there aren't many movies that you see that in. I think prior to this, the movies that you are like exploitation movies that are designed to shock. And the fact that they put that in this movie is this weird. Once again, it's what was the movie aiming to do? What's the filmmaker's intention to put something like that in there if it's not to shock? And you're right, that gore effect is one of those. It's when you watch this, you're just like, it is legitimately one of the goriest slasher movies ever made. And it's weird that it comes in a movie like this. And people don't remember it as being that. It's only when you watch it again, you're like, there's a lot of fake blood flying around here.
Yeah.
It's strange.
Yeah.
And, I think, when I was watching it, I'll agree with you, this particular kill, where he chases her into the room, then he cuts the door open with the chainsaw, then he opens the door and she wets herself, and then he cuts her in half, and then later they find her cut in half. I mean, it was the best done thing that they did in the entire movie.
Oh, without a doubt.
I agree with that. Yeah,
except for the fact that the killer cuts that hole in the door. It's big enough to drive a bus through just to open the door.
Yeah.
He could just cut a little section out,
Yeah, and she's, of course, she's screaming like on the other side of the door hysterically.
Right.
But yeah, and then without that scene, you don't get Christopher George going, he cut that poor girl in half while she was still alive, which is horribly overdubbed. And once again, sounds like it's come from a different movie. Danny spot on. It sounds like someone else has maybe said that sentence.
Right.
But you've got that in there. It's strange. It's really, really strange. But you can add additional things. This movie opens in the strangest way. Boston 1942, and we have this kid putting together a jigsaw, and his obviously borderline hysterical mother comes in and notices that it's one of these novelty nude jigsaws, and then she starts just wailing on him, absolutely hammering him, and then she finds like porn mags that have been stashed away as well, and all these things, and she's like, just, it's your father's, this is all your father's stuff, and you're useless, you're going to turn out to be a pervert like your father. And he, to his credit, takes an axe to her, and you would just think we would see like an axe come down in that bit. No, this movie lets you see axe connect with head about 2 or 3 times.
Yeah,
and then we jump to police officers outside trying to get in, and when we then jump back into the room, he's sawing his mother up. We see him covered in blood with a saw, sawing away through limbs, and then he gets away with the whole murder by hiding him. So, in a locked house, which no one has access to, which means there's only 2 people in there. He hides himself in a cupboard because he's hidden himself from the killer whilst being saturated in his mother's blood. And the police officers don't think anything suspicious here. It's brilliant.
All right, so I'm gonna break it down. We've got our reasons to watch the movie. So Duncan's first reason is Mary, right? Her name is Mary, the cop from and her amazing acting performance and her beautiful visage. I've got my first reason was Willard, the crazy groundskeeper, because he's a crazy groundskeeper, and you got to have that. Also known as red herring. Rick's first reason was the repetitive weird music that carried through the whole thing and really gave you the whole suspenseful, mysterious feel. I've got the second reason. Duncan's is the kung fu trainer out of nowhere and attacks one of our main characters, and then blames it on bad chop suey. My second reason was extended jazzercise scenes. And Rick's second reason was the waterbed sequence, which, as the waterbed is mentioned several times, it is then used in a rather grisly murder near the end of the movie.
In slow-mo.
That scene goes on for a while. I'm not sure if it was slow-mo or if it was just long.
A long scene.
Duncan's third reason is that it's a giallo movie. And also he mentioned the taglines of it's not what you think. Is that what the tagline was?
No, it's exactly what you think it is.
It's exactly what you think it is. See, I didn't see the taglines. I like taglines. And the other, to have to go to Texas to have a massacre. And so I thought those were worth mentioning along with the giallo movie Epiphany on that one. My third reason was the dean saying, "I'm far too busy to talk to anyone," while he's talking to someone. And the third reason that Rick had, full throwdown with Mongo, aka Willard, the groundskeeper guy. Where they're basically trying to take down the creature, the balloon, with breaking boards and eschewing their guns until the end, where they of course yell, "Hold it, or I'll blow your brains out." The fourth reason, which is about where we are before we started moving around a little bit, is Rick had Sergeant Holden.
Yes,
the Leslie Nielsen Frank cop who wants his buddy to quit smoking and can't find evidence even after he's been looking for 23 hours.
Just the fact of, at that point too, he gets off the phone. Okay, hangs up and goes, "Yeah, it's the counselor. He just throws his jacket on. Yeah, it's him. He changed his name.
And my fourth reason, which I didn't really get to, it's a decent mystery. There are a whole lot of pretty much anybody could be it. You know who the killer is because you saw them as a child, but you don't know who they grew up to be. So I think that was done pretty well as far as like keeping you guessing. I was just going to say Duncan's next reason was Kendall, who absolutely is a reason to watch it. Our untrained cop phenomenon, and then we'll get back to the discussion.
Yeah, I think you were talking about the it could be anyone. There's a great scene after the body's found in the elevator where the camera pans around and all the suspects are standing all together, and it's like something right out of Clue. You know what I mean? It's like this, like the camera spins around and they're all kind of standing. It could be any one of us. And you see them, like, it knows what it is. It kind of knows that, we need to have all our characters stand together so we can now create a bit more mystery in a movie which, let's be honest, or suspense and mystery are maybe strong words. My last reason, because like I say, I could literally talk about this movie for about 7 hours, and whilst I would be happy, no one listening to it will be happy. Is one of the names associated with this project. So, screenplay was co-wrote by Joe D'Amato.
Yeah,
infamous exploitation stroke porn director who was involved with a ton of movies. I mean, his credits for just purely directing movies are close to 200.
Anthropophagus, man.
Yeah, one of his very first projects. The guy was associated with some weird and wonderful movies. Like, it was the producer on Anthropophagus, like you said, and the unofficial sequel, Absurd. He was a producer on that. He was a producer on Stage Fright Aquarius, a producer on Beyond Darkness, Troll 2, just like weird projects that he was linked to. He's also credited in screenwriting a lot of movies as well. How that works, I don't know. Whether he took a pass.
It's like the Italian Corman. I mean, he was everywhere.
That's exactly who he is. Yeah, it's exactly who he is. He is the Italian Roger Corman. He did everything, every style of movies D'Amato was involved with. He eventually became just a porn director. I think he has a movie called 120 Days of Anal, which is I'm not entirely sure what that movie's about, but part of me wants to find out. But his involvement. I don't know if that is a Hailming. Part of me really wants to know, but there's two reasons. So one, his name being attached to the project is weird, and at the same time, it kind of makes sense. He did a lot of exploitation, a lot of genre cinema, which was just really quickly made, very, very cheap. He put it out, making maybe 5 movies a year and just doing that. But what the thing that gives it this extra little special bit is the fact that he went under a pseudonym to be involved with this project, and his pseudonym is John Shadow. Clearly a fake name. He's either a fake name or he's a private detective from the 1920s. As this could be a case for John Shadow. You know what I mean? That sort of idea. But his name being involved with it just is the frosting on top of the muffin.
It actually makes a lot more sense. Frosting on top of the muffin.
Totally.
That's from another podcast, folks.
But it totally makes sense when you see it. I have to say, watch this movie, and at the end I was to say Joe D'Amato was involved with it, you're going to go, of course it was.
Right. It makes a lot more sense now. I didn't even put that together either. Because he had like 20 pseudonyms anyways. So
he's one of the most active careers of anyone ever. He was a producer, a writer, a director, an actor, and I think when you combine everything together that he's done, you're talking in the region of about 500 different appearances and things that he's done in cinema. It's insane, and not a lot of it is good. But he's attached to this project, so that's one reason definitely to check it out.
I learned something. All right, anybody got anything else they want to air out before we go to a rating?
So I did want to point out that the detective at one point says, hey, it isn't by the book to let Kendall in here. And he says, the book says, get the killer.
That's right. I just love this cop book being handed out, and it's just like the first line. It's not uphold the law, protect the public. It's just the book says find the killer. That's page 1 of your police manual. Find the killer.
I think it definitely is worth mentioning to anyone who hasn't seen this that the last scene of the movie is worth watching the movie for, or at least the last scene of the movie is worth catching. It was mentioned earlier that a Frankenstein woman has been sewn together and she falls on someone. And as she's being carted out, she strangely reanimates to mutilate our erstwhile hero's genitals. And man, it seems like I should be making that up.
No hell, Ming.
That's how you end this movie. So when you, like I say, every time you think you've seen the most absurd thing in this movie, it leaves you with one of the most absurd twist endings to a movie ever. And you're like, generally a movie like this, even a Giallo would go as far as to explain it that's a dream. It doesn't. It just leaves you with.
And I just wanted to throw those out there as reasons to watch the movie that I have in my notes. And having hit it with fresh eyes, I think maybe I noticed some things that you guys didn't, but I'm sure that I hadn't known some of the things that you have because of your vast experience with this piece of cinema gold.
Oh man! Hey, of course, you heard Duncan a while ago bring up Clue.
Yeah,
that's Danny's stomping grounds right there. So
I love Clue.
You may have to come back and do that. Yeah.
Oh, anytime. Clue's legitimately my favorite comedies ever made. So yeah, I would love that.
Awesome.
That's fantastic. Yeah.
Okay, rating time. I'm going to give it 8 girls on skateboards busting through a big picture mirror for some reason.
Nice.
I'll go with 12 jigsaw pieces that don't fit.
Nice. I'm going to give it 12 iterations of the lady cop yelling, "Bastard!" She says it at least 12 times.
Oh yeah, it's great.
greatest scene in movie history.
It's way up there, man.
It's along there with one of those scenes from Troll 2, like, he's eating him. He's gonna eat me. Oh my God.
Speaking of movie history, Brian Blessed, what do you think of Pieces?
Shut up! Will you shut up?
Oh. Apparently he's not a fan.
I thought he was done with the first shut up.
I know. He just kept going. So, all right, folks, we'll be right back.
Are you seeking higher education? Hard to find courses such as advanced jigsaw puzzlery, practical kung fu, anatomy with real human remains, some unidentified, some fresh. Jazzercise your way to health for a half-mile into our subterranean bathrooms. Our campus is well maintained by a live-in groundskeeper. Don't forget to visit our new waterbed in the rec room. Our athletic department can't be beat in slow tennis. So don't be a bastard. Try Pieces University today.
All right, folks, what an episode. If you don't rush out and watch these 2 movies, there's just something wrong with you. It's a great way to kick off the holidays, to kind of get in the spirit of Halloween and stuff. 2 chainsaw classics, if you want to say it that way. Both movies are a lot of fun. There's nothing serious about either one of them. And I don't know, man. I think they're both a lot of fun. Pop you a bunch of popcorn, sit back and call 3 or 4 people and just enjoy these movies. That's the way I feel about it.
Yeah, you can check out both of these movies to kick off the holiday. It's cheaper than going and buying a William Shatner mask.
Very true. And like we said, man, we just love having Duncan with us, and it just feels natural having him in the mix with us. And we want to give him a chance to kind of tell you where you can catch him at. He's just about everywhere you turn. And even I think when I'm caught up with everything he's done, he cranks out 15 more shows. So, Duncan, let it rip, man. Tell us where you're at and what's going on.
I'm guilty as charged. Yeah, I've got various different shows on the go at the moment, so I will fly through them as quick as possible, as to not upset any of your listeners who actually want to hear quality content. So, most recently, I've started a brand new show. It's with former guest of this show, Mr. Andy Blockley. It's just started. It's called Opera Omnia. It's non-genre specific, but each season we will look at a director that we think is worth discussing and go through their entire filmography. Season 1 has started with Michael Mann, and our first episode dropped just recently, so you can go check it out. It's exclusive on Legion Podcast Network. And the first episode we talk about, I think, probably one of his most underrated movies, one of the strongest debuts of any director, and that's Thief with James Caan. It's a brilliant movie. So go and check out Opera Omnia, exclusive on legionpodcast.com. I have another show on Legion. In fact, most of my shows are on Legion Podcast. I do a show called Chronicle Podcast. Season 2 is almost finished. Exclusively looks at European horror cinema. This season it's been looking at witch movies. I've covered some fantastic ones already. I've got a couple left. So by the time this episode drops, I believe my episode on Nicholas Roge's The Witches, based on the Roald Dahl book, will be out. That movie terrified me as a kid, and still does now, actually. Weirdly, it's that Nicholas Roge style. Something so unsettling and creepy about it. So yeah, you can check that one also out exclusively on legionpodcast.com. I do a live radio show every Wednesday night at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time called The Midnight Horror Show. In October, we are delving right back into the horror and doing theme shows based on different paranormal events or activities, which we will link back to movies and popular culture. So you should check that show out live on tmhsradio.com or on the TuneIn app. You can check TMHS Radio or check the Midnight Horror Show on Facebook and on iTunes. My main show is the podcast Under the Stairs. It's been ongoing for a little while. We're doing the Baz v Horror kind of subset of Baz v Halloween shows in October. They're a lot of fun. The Baz is very animated. You should listen to it just for that. You can go to tputscast.com, check out the podcast Under the Stairs on iTunes, or also check that one out on legionpodcast.com. And I just want to say, before you send me off, that it has been an absolute privilege and pleasure coming back to the Hail Ming Power Hour. It is, I say it before, I say it every chance I get, legitimately one of my favourite podcasts that's come out in a long, long time. I think you and Danny do an absolutely fantastic job of just capturing the fun and the nostalgia for movies that people, even if they are talking about, are critically viewing them and forgetting that these movies are meant to be entertainment. Right. I think you guys capture the spirit of that better than any show, and it's an absolute privilege and pleasure to be back on here. So thank you very much for inviting me back on.
Oh man, anytime. I mean, you know, like we said, you're in our eyes, in my eyes, anyways. I don't know how Danny feels because he's kind of weird like that. But your podcast, your podcast royalty, as far as I'm concerned. So anytime that you're willing to come on, we're just going to find a place for you. That's the way I see it. And thanks for the kind words. If you're looking for words with more than 3 syllables, this is not your show. Yeah, it's entertainment, and that's what we want the show to be as well. And having guests on that are entertaining as well just really helps us spread that out there even wider. So just it's thrilling to have you on the show, man.
Thank you very much.
Danny, you have a heart attack or something? Or?
I just wanted to. Yeah, well, I was waiting my turn. There was a lot of gushery going on there, and I want to be in I don't want to cut into that. It's a beautiful thing. I just had to say for our listeners out there, anti-disestablishmentarianism.
So like I said last week, we have jumped our iTunes numbers as far as subscriptions and people leaving us ratings and stars from 6 up to 7. So we appreciate you guys making the effort. Keep that going, and by the time we reach year 50, maybe we'll have, 10, 12 subscribers. So appreciate that, guys. No, we love each and every one of you, man. And this show doesn't mean a thing if you guys aren't listening. I know everybody doesn't use iTunes, but that's just one way you can really help out the show. So do that for us. Do that for Duncan's shows. He's all on iTunes as well. Go in there, leave him some 5 stars, leave him some good comments. And that's the only way that this thing gets spread out to everybody else, to the masses. And we just appreciate you listening. And we're looking forward to next week when we don't know exactly yet what we're doing, but it's going to be horror related. Right?
No, I was lost at the rim shot.
Shut up, would ya? So for myself, and if Danny's not going to say anything, you got anything you want to say, Knucklehead?
I'm out.
We'll see you guys later. Duncan, say goodbye, my man.
Bye-bye, my man.
Y'all take it easy.